attendance and also a ridiculous amount of questions that were submitted in advance. And I think that shows just the interest and the commitment that the community has to seeing USM succeed. So thank you for being here this morning.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Lisa, and thank you to everyone who attended. This is really amazing. One of the things that I've learned since I've been in Maine is that it seems like everybody's a morning person. And so being here this early in the morning just seems routine, and I appreciate that so much.
You were so spot on with that earliness, my goodness. So how was your second official back to school?
Oh, it was amazing. It was just wonderful to welcome the students back. And we have a tradition at the campus of having an opening breakfast for the faculty and staff. And it was wonderful to walk into the room and to know people's names and to ask them how their summers had been and to just have that experience of really connecting with people. And I'm teaching a class this fall, and that has just been amazing. I have 22 students in a class that's about civic and community leadership and engagement, and I am so inspired by them and by the student body here at the university as a whole. So it's been a great start to the fall. We also have an incredible day ahead of us today. We have the ribbon cutting for the McGoldrick Center for Career and Student Success, and I know that Dick McGoldrick is here and Joe Wishcamper is here, and I have to tell you how incredibly special it is for me. My office is in the Wishcamper building on the Portland campus. I have offices on the other campuses too. But that name, Wishcamper, has come to mean so much to me because of Joe and Carol. They're incredible people. And then I look across the street, or I walk across the street, and then I'm in the McGoldrick Center. And so I feel so embraced every day by people who I know care so much about our university and our students and the success of this region. And that is just unbelievably special to me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I appreciate what a busy day you have in starting it with us. That really is quite a milestone to have your ribbon cutting today. So let's back up a little bit and talk about how you got here today. Not specifically how you drove here, but how you made it to Portland, starting by growing up on a farm outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so my first home was on my grandfather's farm outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He farmed corn and he had cattle, but it was not a working farm. So he also worked on the railroad in Enola, Pennsylvania. He worked 11 to 7, the night shift, farmed during the day, and sometimes worked in a butcher shop. And I think from both of my grandparents, I learned an incredible, strong work ethic. And I really give them a lot of credit for my ability to go on to college. So I was a first-generation college student, and my parents didn't want me to go to college. They didn't think I needed to. They thought I could just get married and have a nice life, which I did get married and have a wonderful husband. But that wasn't the only thing that I wanted to do. And so, it was my grandfather who drove me to college the first day of school, and I'll never forget it because he had an F-150 Ford, or it was an F-100, I'm sorry, Ford pickup truck. It was brown. It had this, the stick shift on the column, and he smoked unfiltered cigarettes. So as we drove, I think he was a little nervous, and he kept pulling the cigarettes out of his pocket, and he kept smoking. And sometimes he would drop them on the floor, and he would just pick them up and keep smoking. And by the time I got to school, I was afraid my roommate would think I was a smoker because I just smelled of smoke. But he was wonderful. He helped me to unload my things, and it was one of the few times I saw him cry when he dropped me off.
Oh.
And he also at one point said, "Now just wait a minute, I'll be right back." And he came back to my room and had this huge padlock because he realized that my desk had a little place where you could put a lock. And he said, "Put your money in there and lock it so nobody can get it," which I thought was hysterical at the time because I think I only had $20 to my name. But he cared a lot that I was able to pursue my dreams, as did my grandmother, and I still appreciate that so much.
Yeah, and you started studying piano.
I did, yes. So I was admitted to the university, but I really wanted to be a piano performance major. And Dr. Stephen Smith was the piano professor at the time, and I give him so much credit for taking a chance on me. And I think about that with our students, because here I was, this kid who came out of rural Pennsylvania, not very sophisticated. I think I'd only been to New York City one time in my life. I mean, there was just all of this, but somehow he saw some potential in me and welcomed me into his piano studio. And it's because of that that I was able to go to college. And I'm still in touch with Dr. Smith today, which I love. I mean, we have email exchanges every so often. And my husband and I decided to make a gift to the Center for the Arts, which is under construction at the University of Southern Maine. And one of the piano studios will be named in his honor. And so that's
Oh, that's
very special to
wonderful.
us.
Yeah. So then how did you make the pivot from piano to education?
Well, my extended family couldn't figure out why I was going to be a piano performance major and what I would actually do with that. I remember my uncle at one point said, what are you going to do, Jackie? Just go wait tables in New York City until you get a gig, right? So there was this pressure to do something else. And of course, you come from a working class family, being a nurse or being a teacher made sense. So I thought about both of those and ended up going into teaching. And so my first job when I graduated from Penn State as an undergraduate student was as a preschool and kindergarten teacher. And I love that work. In fact, yesterday I got to go to the South Portland School District and I spent a little bit of time in the Skillings Elementary School and I was able to read to second graders. And I will tell you, there's nothing more delightful than spending some time with children who remind you, especially at the school, that the children were coming from so many different countries in just this one small class. I mean, I do this because they were sitting on the floor as I was reading to them. And it was just beautiful to hear their perspectives on the book we were reading and the questions they asked and their just joy in the world. Right?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Talk about the rest of your education because you went on to get your master's and also your doctorate all at Penn State University.
I did. That wasn't really by design. It just kind of happened. So my husband and I had been living in Pittsburgh. He went to culinary school there and ended up with a job in State College. And I decided that I really loved how children learn to read and language development. And I went on to get my master's degree in educational psychology and a reading specialist certification. But when I was in my graduate courses, there were professors who were saying to me, independent of one another, as far as I could tell, that I should probably go on and pursue a doctorate. And I remember going home to my husband and saying, you know, these professors are encouraging me to get a doctorate. I don't really know what that means. And he said, he didn't miss a beat. He said, just do it. He said, it'll change our lives, it'll change our sons' lives, and there'll be so many opportunities that open up because of that. And so we didn't look back. We just kept going, and we shuffled kids back and forth in the driveway, trying to balance some pretty crazy schedules. And thankfully, we were young when we did that, and we had enough energy to get through the day.
And so then you went on to have a long career at Penn State. You spent a lot of time there.
I know, I never would have expected that when I was a 17-year-old freshman at Penn State. My first job when I was finishing my doctorate was at the University of Minnesota Morris. So I went there for a couple of years, and then I got hired back to Penn State. And I started on the faculty there and had just different administrative opportunities that came along. And I was an associate dean for a while, an associate vice president, and then most recently I was the chancellor and chief academic officer at Penn State Greater Allegheny, which is the campus closest to Pittsburgh. And it was an incredibly special place. I loved that university. There were so many first-generation college students there. The student body was incredibly diverse. There was about 47% of the students were from underrepresented groups and coming from some difficult neighborhoods in Pittsburgh. And it was just really rewarding to work with that population and to see students go on and earn their degrees and have their lives changed.
Well, Penn State is much larger than USM and even the UMaine system. There are some similarities because of the multi-campus vibe. So what things did you take from Penn State that you brought here to Maine with you?
I loved working across campus locations, and that is certainly one of the things that I was attracted to at USM. I love that we have campus in Gorham, Portland, and Lewiston, and I think there's just incredible potential for our Lewiston campus, and so I'm excited about that being a health education corridor and really thinking about what we can do in that community. But I think the other thing that I brought was an understanding of how complex systems work. And so when I was an associate vice president for undergraduate education, I worked across all 20 university locations on curriculum, access and affordability programs, student success. And so coming to the University of Maine system was something I was really interested in because we were in the process of getting unified accreditation. I think the system's trying to understand what it should be moving forward, and I felt like I could participate in building something that would be new and different and would benefit the state of Maine.
One of the things that I read in doing my research was about how you would have lunches with students at Penn State to deepen connections. What kind of surprising things did you learn from students at those, let's call them listening sessions, and are you doing the same thing here at USM?
Yeah, I try to do the same thing here at USM. It's interesting because we have the different locations, and so I, try to pop in during the lunch hour when I can to see how students are doing. The other thing that the University of Southern Maine has that I love is the Husky line that is the bus between Gorham and Portland. And the students tell me that it's called the Busky, that I shouldn't call it the Husky line, which shows my nerdiness. But I love to sit with them and just to hear how their days are going, or just walking across campus here. Students tell me, how they're doing. The students, I've been here long enough now that the students recognize me.
Yeah.
And I learned at Greater Allegheny by sitting in on lunch just randomly with students, just how their days were going, what they were worried about. Sometimes there were simple solutions, like commuter students said, I can't afford to buy lunch for lunch and dinner. My classes start in the morning and I'm here until evening. We need a refrigerator in the commuter lounge. I'm like, oh my gosh, of course we can get you a refrigerator for the commuter lounge. So, just some of those honest conversations, and just sometimes the simplest things can make such a big difference. And I think that's one thing we always need to be paying attention to. is
Right, a
really-
little thing can change someone's outlook and day, so that's great. You also mentioned that your dog is a big connector of
Yes.
you to the community, right?
Yes, that's so true. We have a dog named Elbow. We were here a week, and my husband decided to go pick up a yellow lab puppy in Turner, Maine. And but the students love Elbow, and when we walk across campus, sometimes they recognize Elbow before they recognize me. And Elbow just is so at home on the university campus. The staff love Elbow, and Elbow has an Instagram account that has more followers than I do. So all of you. All of you could help me. If you start to follow USM_president, maybe I can beat Elbow. But if you go to elbow.edmondson, you can follow Elbow too. So, yeah.
That's great. All right, let's talk about the interview process at USM. Many people are always interested in how do you get these leadership positions. So you have a wonderful career. You're at Penn State University. How did USM find you? Talk about the process.
Sure. And so there was a search firm managing the search, and somebody nominated me for the position. So the search firm reached out to me and gave me the information on the University of Southern Maine. And I spent some time with the materials. I was happy with what I was doing, but I also had a feeling like I was interested in the next thing. And for me, it wasn't really about the title of the job that I would hold next. It was about the work that I would do. Like, I wanted to go to a place where I could really work to advance education, a place that had great potential. I have a colleague and a dear friend who works in the Silicon Valley in Southern California, and I remember him telling me one time, Jackie, don't go to places that are sinking ships. Find places where you can get on the tailwinds and really take a place to the next level. And so as I interviewed and learned more about the University of Southern Maine, I felt like this was a place where I could do that. It's a great university. There's so much happening here, and we can take it to the next level, which I'm really excited about. And so I was interested in the work that was here. When I interviewed, I met people who I really connected with and enjoyed. There are so many special treasures here at the University of Southern Maine that aren't other places, like the Osher Map Library and the Smith Cartographic Center, the planetarium, in fact, the Center for Book Arts. I mean, they're just some unique features of the university. The Osher School of Music captured my imagination for reasons you might guess.
Right.
There were just so many things that seemed right, and I was just really happy whenever I was offered the position, was able to come here.
How long was the process?
Oh, goodness. I think my application materials would have been submitted in January of 2022. I remember this, I interviewed on April 4th and 5th because April 4th is my son's birthday, and I remember calling him from the hotel room here in Portland and saying, oh, guess what? And then I was announced as president on May 16th.
Great.
So it takes a little bit of time, yeah.
Had you been to Maine before you interviewed?
Yeah, actually I was. The summer before, this was as we were coming out of COVID. My husband Michael and I had airline tickets that were put on hold for a trip during COVID, and we needed to use them. And I was trying to figure out where we should go and how we should use the tickets. And I said, let's just go to Portland, Maine and check it out. And we came here and we loved the place. I mean, just the food and the culture. And at that point, I had no idea that this job would be an opportunity for us. So when we saw the job, that also helped us to think, yes, that's a region we would enjoy, where we would enjoy living.
Right? So let's talk about starting your job as the 14th president of the University of Southern Maine. And I have a question from Heather Paquette, who is the new president of the Good Shepherd Food Bank, and she is here this morning. How did you enter your role at USM and identify your early priorities?
Sure. So one of the things that happened before I was even announced as president is there was onboarding, and I was reviewing materials for the university. I was talking with staff at the University of Maine system, and I was just learning as much as I could. And then in those early weeks in the summer, I was trying to get out to meet as many people as I could as well. And so early on, from the study of the university, from talking with people, I learned that I really needed to build relationships. I mean, I was coming in during the public phase of the last year of the Great University campaign, and I didn't want them to lose momentum. The University of Southern Maine Foundation is amazing. There are wonderful people involved, and I knew that I really had to hit the ground running and just meeting as many people as I could, not just within the university, but outside. So building relationships was one. Creating a sense of belonging for the university community. It's really important to me that anybody who comes to the university feels like they belong and they can thrive and do their very best work. I also heard that we needed to have really strong communications plans, so we worked on that as a priority in my first 100 days. And then there are these signature and premier programs at the university, and I really wanted to enhance and expand those as we got started, because there are so many things that are just kind of under the radar at the University of Southern Maine, just really excellent programs that we need to shine a light on and help people to know about.
One of the things that the university has a great reputation for are your connections with local businesses
Yeah.
and partnerships, as you just discussed. Give us a couple of your favorites that you feel like are really making a difference.
Sure. I mean, I think there are so many things that we're doing through the Maine Economic Improvement Fund, MEIF. We have wonderful connections through the Hussey Leadership Institute, where we bring business leaders together. I think we have great connections for students who are doing internships and, just on hands-on kinds of experiences. And that's one of the reasons why I'm excited for the McGoldrick Center for Career and Student Success, because that'll be another space where local businesses can connect with our students. But then there are other partnerships we have that I think are important, like the Southern Maine Pathways Program, which is a program that we have in place with Southern Maine Community College. We have 136 students from SMCC living in the Portland Commons on the Portland.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and an opportunity for us to think about how we get these seamless pipelines from the community college into the university, and then into graduate programs, whether they're with the University of Maine system or the programs that Michael mentioned earlier with the Rue Institute, just thinking about that continuum of education. So the SMCC students who are with us are students who are welcome to our events. They live on our campus, they use the McGoldrick Center, they eat there, they're part of whatever they want to be on our campus. So we're hoping that helps with the transition for them from the community college into our degree programs.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We got a question from Laurie Cunningham from Work Group Technology Partners saying, I appreciate your partnership with Gorham High School dual enrollment and love to hear more about your partnership with high schools in the area.
Oh, sure. So, I mean, the Gorham School District has been amazing. And one of the things that Superintendent Heather Perry has come to us with is the question about whether we could help educate a pipeline of special education teachers. And so one of the partnerships we have now is with Gorham High School, Westbrook, and Scarborough to educate people who are working as ed techs in the public school system and helping them to earn their credentials to become teachers of record as special education teachers. So that's one place we're excited about that. The other thing we've started to pilot with the Westbrook School District is an early college program that would get people interested in becoming teachers earlier on. I know there's this incredible shortage of teachers in the state of Maine, across the nation actually, and that's one of the priorities for us, is to think about the different ways we can get people interested in becoming K-12 teachers.
Oh, that's great. The ed techs are such a critical part of any public school system, so it's great that you're investing in them and seeing how they can move up and become teachers. One of the things that that USM positions itself as is a comprehensive regional university. Did I say no? A regional comprehensive university. Can you explain what that is and why it matters?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that regional comprehensives are so important to the communities where those campuses are located. So, public regional comprehensives often have a history just like the USM. They started as normal schools. They became were schools that educated teachers. They became state teacher colleges, and then they went on to become more comprehensive in the fact that they were just offering a broader array of degree programs. But regional comprehensives typically, they were called regional for a reason. Over 80% of the students would come from the local areas where the campuses were located. They were often reliant on, just as we are, on state appropriations and state funding. And regional comprehensives often have this identity crisis because they're typically in the shadow of a flagship or of a land grant. I know, ring a bell, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I think is important for us now to think about is what will regional comprehensives look like moving forward? And a comprehensive university, just like USM, is known to provide access. We have a number of different kinds of degree programs, bachelor's, master's, doctorate, many points of entry for people into the university, whether you're just out of high school or you have some college credits, or whatever the case may be. So it's about access, it's about excellence, and I think we need to start changing the dynamic to think about how we're not just regional in nature. So I'm thinking about how we become a national comprehensive institution, which means I want the University of Southern Maine to have a reputation that people recognize across the country. I want us to be bringing students in from all over the country. Our incoming class this year, we have students from 35 states and 12 countries. So I've challenged the admissions staff to let's get students from all 50 states. What are we waiting for?
For the holdouts.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Let's get them here and help them to experience Maine and all that we have to offer.
Great. Now, you yourself are first generation college students, and many students at USM also are. Why does that matter? And also, I'm going to give you the softball right into the Promise Scholarship, which is really committed to helping first generation students succeed.
Yeah. I mean, as a first generation student myself, I know how transformative a college education is. I know how it can change people's lives, and I've seen that people's lives have been changed as they earn their degree from my years of working in higher education. And the Promise Scholars Program is incredibly special, and I'm so thankful to Dick and Carolyn McGoldrick for their vision for this program and for all the many people who have donated scholarships to this program. And what it does is the students are mostly first generation students, and it ensures that they graduate from the university without debt. That's important, and it does more. In addition to the scholarship funds, there is a director for the program. His name is Daniel Barton, and he does an amazing job. And one of the things that I love about Daniel is he acts as a GPS, if you will. And I thought you could talk about driving in this morning. I still use my GPS to get from Gorham to Portland because there are 8,000 different ways that you can go to avoid traffic. And but Daniel does that. He sees the students as they're moving along through their degree program, and if they start to take a slightly different turn, he pulls them back in. And so he has these wraparound services that are available for the students to make sure that they're able to see their way to earning their degree. And I think that program is incredibly special, and we're seeing higher graduation rates with the students who are in that program. There's a lot of diversity in the student body, the Promise Scholars, and so I'm just really proud of the program and the work that's happening there. And again, thanks to so many people who have given scholarships to help make that possible.
I've done a lot of work with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Southern Maine, and that is such a pipeline into the Promise Scholars. And it's so great to see these kids who come to the club have this opportunity to go on to college. But I think you're absolutely right. That support system is critical to get them through it. So that's fantastic. How do you build connections with online students?
Yeah, that's harder to do for sure.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we've done at the University of Southern Maine is the online students have a seat in our student government. And I work to meet with the student government on a regular basis. But I think we can do so much more. And so one of the things that I've talked with the faculty and the staff at the University of Southern Maine about is the fact that a college degree is not just the sum of the classes you take. And so I worry sometimes that online education can feel that way, that you're taking a class and another class and another class. But college education are also the experiences that you have in addition to those classes, the clubs and organizations you're participating in, service learning you might do. And so we're working hard to think about the ways in which we can engage our online students in activities that make sense to them, because many of them are adult students who have lots of demands on their time. But how do we help to engage them in those other sorts of things that round out a college experience? And so that's one of my priorities and one of the things that I'm thinking about these days.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I'm glad you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple questions coming. George McGallis from GM Counseling says, how do you promote and instill the values of community service for college students and staff?
Yeah, well, I think some of that is just making sure that we're connected to the problems of the community and we're working to solve them. And I think, for example, the class that I'm teaching right now, I've asked the students to really come to understand Portland, Gorham, and Lewiston and to think about what they're seeing as the most pressing problems. And it may not surprise you that one of the areas that they're interested in is unhoused students and unhoused people and the housing crisis in Portland. And so we're working to find ways to help them understand how they can engage in local democracy to solve those problems. So part of it is through education, part of it is through making sure that it's valued and celebrated when faculty and staff are engaged with the community. One other example I would give briefly is Side by Side, which is an arts nonprofit here in Portland, and it was started by one of USM's alumna and one of our professors. It's been around for quite a while, and Senator Angus King helped to make sure that it had some congressionally delegated funds to do some special programming with K-12 teachers on integrating the arts into science and other curriculum in K-12 schools. And so that's something I want to put a spotlight on, because I think and certainly there are other faculty and staff doing that kind of important work in our communities, and I'm really glad to see that happening.
How do you manage your schedule? You must have so many demands because you have so many stakeholders that you need to take care of, but also the multi-campus. I'm sure, do you get a hard time like, oh, she's in Portland again today, or when was the last time she was in Lewiston? Because I know I get that.
Yeah.
So I would love some tips on how to manage that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, and I run as a hobby, and one thing I've learned through running is that you just put left foot, right foot some days, and you find a way to keep going. And I try to make sure people understand where I am and why. So I try to spend at least 2 days a week on the Gorham campus, typically Tuesdays and Fridays. About every other Wednesday or so, I get to Lewiston, and then the other days I'm in Portland. Sometimes it doesn't work out perfectly, and I just try to make myself as available as I can to people wherever I may be. And I think folks know they can email me, or in some cases text or call, depending on what might be happening. So I try to be available. And I think the pandemic actually helped us with that, because we realized that we don't always have to be face to face in order to have a meeting or to connect. So the location doesn't always matter quite as much.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk. Oh, we're getting ready to go to questions. Where's Strawberry? There she is. Are you going to microphone around on the questions? How are we doing that?
And wireless at the same time, so you're just going to shout your questions.
Oh, just shout the questions. Okay, so get ready. Think about your questions. Okay, because I have like 300 more, but and many of you submitted them. Okay, let's talk about your leadership style. So describe your leadership style. How did it evolve? Were mentors a role in your life?
Yeah. So there are all these things people write about leaders and the words they put to them, and I think that my leadership style can change depending on the situation. But I'm told that I'm a transformational leader, and I think that's because I have a particular vision for public higher education, and I work hard to bring people along and to reach that vision. I also think of leadership as service. I mean, it's not about me, it's about the work, and it's about the people that we're trying to serve. And I also feel that leadership is done well when it's relational. I mean, I think I need to know the people who are part of my organization, part of the communities where our campuses are located, so that we can work together to advance what we're trying to accomplish. I've had different mentors over the years, faculty mentors, and I participated in some leadership institutes, one with the CIC, which was the academic arm of the Big Ten, which is now like Big 16 or something, the Big Ten schools. And I participated in one with AALI. It was an American Leadership Institute. And I don't know, I mean, those are interesting and helpful, but often in those situations, it's the people you're sitting side by side with and the people
Right.
you meet along the way that are important to you. And I love to read biographies, and I read about leaders, and I try to look for things that I think are admirable, and also things that I definitely don't want to do. In fact, every time there's a president fired at a university and it's reported in the Chronicle of Higher Education, I read it so that I'm sure, like, not going to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I make sure that I keep on top of that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of reading, you also are a writer, an accomplished author, and you've published a number of books, which are all available on Amazon, except I think one is out of print.
Yeah.
But you wrote an encyclopedia of American music.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. When I was a little kid, I loved encyclopedias. I mean, my mom had the World Book. Remember back in the days, you'd get those, and I was committed to reading from A to Z. And every year when the yearbook came, I read the yearbook. And my kids think I'm a total nerd. They were in high school when this project came up. So it was a 4-volume encyclopedia on music and American life. I had over 200, it was intended for high school students. So my sons were in high school and their friends were around. And I would say things like, what would you want to read in an encyclopedia? And I'm like, we don't read encyclopedias, so I don't know what you're doing. But they would give me topics like death and music, like these weird, goofy topics that high school kids would think of. And it was a really interesting project. I had over 200 authors from around the world who contributed to the volume. I wrote some of the entries myself. And it was a real learning experience for me too. And I remember one day I wanted to have an entry on the Carter family. And so June Carter Cash and Johnny Cash's son he's sort of the keeper of the Carter family legacy. I looked him up and I thought, oh, dare I email him and ask him to write the Carter family entry, and what would he say? And then I thought, he's either going to ignore me, say yes, or say no. And so I wrote to him, and about 30 minutes later, he responded, and he actually wrote the Carter family entry for that particular encyclopedia. So it was a lot of fun.
I think we need to do an event just on that book.
Oh my
I think that would be so fun. And then you could play the piano
Oh no.
along, right? I mean, I'm already picturing it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be great. What questions do we have from the audience? Just shout them out wherever you might be. Oh, let's start over here.
I'm Bob Dunphy. I'm the race director of the Maine Marathon. We're happening this weekend. Expo on Saturday, race on Sunday. We have over 4,000 runners, which is a record number. 900 volunteers, and we have 60 sponsors. And we've raised $6.4 million since 1997. We have another 600,000. I'm likely to raise this year. USM, Jackie's a runner, and she's also a sponsor. And they agreed in June to provide free parking as they have for 30 years. But last week she decided to charge us $4 an hour. I want to understand why you made that decision.
Well, Bob, I'm glad that you brought that up, and it's inaccurate to say that we're charging you $4 an hour. We have provided you with information about how the marathon runners and the volunteers can park for free at USM. There's a QR code they'll scan when they come in. There's a code they enter into their phone app, and every marathon runner and every volunteer will be free. And so we've agreed to do that, which is actually above and beyond what the sponsorship that we have is a silver sponsorship. It's a $5,000 sponsorship. And we're giving more than that because the marathon has the use of the Sullivan Gym, and they'll have free parking for all of the runners and volunteers.
So
Nuts.
we're going to take another question right here.
So I heard some good advice for entrepreneurs, which is you often spend too much time analyzing what went wrong so you don't do it again, and not nearly enough time understanding what went right and how to do it so you can do it again. So you've been here for a little while. What went right?
Yeah.
Are you confident you understand how to do it again, and what help do you need to do it again?
Yeah. I think one of the things that has gone right, and I'm so thankful for, is just the relationships that we've been able to build over the past year. I think there are many people in this room who are just wonderful. I consider them friends and colleagues, and I think keeping the relationships strong is one of the ways in which we can be successful moving forward. There are always difficult decisions to make as a university president, as you're leading any organization. There are going to be people who are happy, people who are not happy, and that's part of the job. And I think that's one of the things we just have to keep doing, building relationships, building trust.
Sir?
Yes, my name is Dan Raposa. I head up a foundation that started with Northeast Credit Union, and we're really focused in on food insecurity and the homelessness, unhoused situation. I'm really pleased to hear you talk about the students embracing that unhoused initiative. What, if any, food insecurity issues are affecting the campuses both in Lewiston and Gorham and here in Portland? Because I know our foundation recently has reached out to several higher ed institutions, and they do see a food pantry on campus as something that's important. Do you have one at USM, and where does that stand in kind of those community priorities for the students especially?
No, you're right. I mean, food insecurity is just a huge challenge for everyone. We do have a food pantry on each of the campuses, and Oakhurst has been a wonderful sponsor. Last year, they gave us $250,000 for our food pantry. We find that not only are students using the food pantry, but sometimes our staff are using it as well. And so it is something that I think we need to continually attend to help people know that it's available to them and to make sure that there are opportunities for people to access food. You can't learn, you can't do your very best work if you're hungry. And so we really need to keep working on that together.
Jane?
I'm Jane Stevens. I'm an advisor at Morgan Stanley, and I'd love to know what you're reading, like professionally or leadership development, as well as like for leisure.
Yeah, sure. My goodness, I have stacks of books that I'm in various stages of reading. I love to read. I've been reading books that are fiction books about Maine. I've loved that because it just gives me a different insight on the state of Maine. So I've read a bunch of the Elizabeth Strout books, for example, and other authors that write about Maine. And then I'm also reading, David Straley has a book about great universities and great cities and how they're interconnected. And so that's something else that I'm reading right now. And I just picked up Yellowface. There's so many wonderful little bookstores in Portland. And so my problem is I walk into these bookstores and I gather up a bunch of books, and now I have a pile to read. But yeah, thank you.
How much do you sleep?
Well, usually when I go to bed, I am out. I sleep like a rock, so about 5 or 6 hours. Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I saw some other hands. Did we have any more questions? Joe?
Jackie, could you just talk about the percentage of undergraduates who are majoring in STEM versus humanities and liberal arts?
Yeah, I would say that about a third of our students are majoring in some kind of STEM field, whether it's technology, computer science, traditional sort of biology, chemistry, engineering, those kinds of things. And one of the things I'm really interested in, Joe, is making sure that our students who are in STEM fields also have opportunities to concurrently study the liberal arts. And because I think that combination of arts and humanities with STEM, arts and humanities with professional and social sciences, that's so incredibly important for the future of people's careers and for our communities as well. And we have, as Mike mentioned earlier, we have some nice pipelines from our STEM programs into some of the programs here at the Rue Institute, also into the University of Maine at Orono. So there are a lot of opportunities for people to continue those degrees.
Dan, you had another question. What about football, Jackie?
Oh,
Right? Was that your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's from another life. I was blessed to be a UNH alum who worked not only for UMO, a beloved Black Bear fan now, but also at USM back in the late, I think it was probably late 90s. I was working at UNH with football, and your athletic director asked if I would initiate a kind of study around football. And it was a time when the chancellor considered it.
yeah.
And I think when you talk about that flagship university issue versus the USM kind of identity, football could have changed that. And I'm just wondering if that's on the horizon. I know what they've done at UNE. I was blessed to be a part of that consulting effort there with Alphon funding. But any thoughts about football at USM?
Yeah, no, and I come from Penn State University where there's a lot of football, so I completely get it, right? But no, there are no plans for football at USM, although we are looking at some additional athletics teams. Though I think the athletic programs at a Division III school are so important. The students just get so many opportunities for, leadership and engagement, and also just to stay healthy and compete. And I love going to the events on the Gorham campus to see our students and the many accomplishments they have on the court, on the field, whatever the case may be.
Has pickleball taken over the tennis courts?
No, it is a thing, isn't it?
It is a thing.
They're on the, yeah, and they're on the basketball court playing pickleball, and I didn't realize that was a thing. The other thing that is new in the sports area is gaming, e-gaming, and so we have over 160 students in our e-game club.
Wow.
I had no idea that was such a big deal. So we're excited about that, and we'll soon be announcing a 6-figure gift to the Gorham campus that has some connection there. And I can't, my USM Foundation people will say, stop, stop talking, because I don't want to take the thunder away from their big announcement.
I think clubs are such an important way for students, especially first-year students, to connect with each other, because it can be intimidating to get dropped off by your grandfather
Yeah.
alone, right?
It's so true.
I think we had one. Did you have a question behind Joe? No? Oh, okay. Oh, yes.
Jackie, this is great, particularly the vision that you're articulating for the future. Can you elaborate a little bit more about the vision specifically for the Portland campus?
Yeah, for me, the Portland campus, I mean, we've been around for 145 years, right? We should be a hub and a connector for other universities here, which is what I feel we're building with the connections with RU. My dear colleague, James Herbert, President Herbert is here from UNE. We meet regularly and have wonderful ideas about ways we can collaborate. And so I think we're a connector. We really sit at the center of so many different things. Same with SMCC. I meet regularly with the SMCC president, who is now interim, Tiffany Bentley. And, you know, just thinking about ways we can make Portland a college town. Great cities have great universities. I don't think we need to have the traditional silos that have existed in the past, because we all benefit if we're working together and finding ways to collaborate to advance knowledge, to advance science, to advance whatever the case may be. So I am thankful for the colleagues that are here in this room who are helping to bring, you know, that we're working to come together and think about ways we can advance universities and higher education.
Well, that is a great place for us to wrap up. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jackie, for your leadership at USM.
Thank you.